It ended up being a little, but the Seahawks find a way to get their 8th victory on the road against the Titans. How'd they get it done in Nashville? Going to be breaking it all down in our weekly post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in, and thank you for your patience this evening. Been trying to get the internet connection to work here on the road, so hopefully that won't be an issue throughout the course of post-game podcast. But as always, special thanks to all the 12s that are tuning in, whether you are in Bremerton, Washington, or you are listening down in Mesa, Arizona. We appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen days a week. The Seahawks moving to 8-3, though it certainly ended up being too close for comfort down the stretch. Titans, the one-win Titans, pesky wouldn't go away. Seattle nonetheless finds a way to close out the game 30-24. They're staying within striking distance of the Rams. Unfortunately, the Rams winning tonight big as well, so they stay a full game and a half by default with their tiebreaker over the Seahawks ahead in the NFC West. Going to be diving into everything coming out of today's game in Nashville, all the key players, game balls, offense, defense, special teams, 3 up, 3 down, you name it, we've got it all covered here on our post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks, which is brought your way by our friends at Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Now for your lead story here on our post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks, coming off a tough 2-point defeat to the Rams in Los Angeles, the Seahawks went out and got the job done to pick up their 8th victory of the season in Tennessee, a 30-24 win. And this really was kind of a bizarre game when you think about it, because if you watch this game closely, the Seahawks were up by 20 points multiple times in this game. It felt like it was never really in doubt. And yet at the same time, this game ended up being a 6-point game because the Titans scored 2 touchdowns late in the third quarter into the fourth quarter. They were able to make this look a lot closer than it really was most of the game. I felt like Seattle was in complete control, and yet the defense struggled at times with Cam Ward in this game. And I'm going to say this right now. That might have been my biggest takeaway coming out of today. If the Tennessee Titans can actually get a couple more players around Cam Ward, that kid's got a chance to be a really good NFL quarterback. I was impressed with the way that he navigated the pocket, his toughness. There was a couple throws that he made that I didn't think the Seahawks played bad defense on, and he just made better plays. One being noteworthy in the fourth quarter, Seattle ended up getting a turnover on downs on this possession. Crazy enough, but he was literally falling out of bounds, Cam Ward was, and he had Leonard Williams about ready to deck him. And he threw a ball back across his body in the middle of the field, wide open to Xavier Restrepo. So you got to see some of the tools why he was the number 1 overall pick coming out of Miami in this game. Seattle had some issues getting him down. They got a few sacks, 4 total on him, but it felt like they could have had 7, 8, 9 of them in this game. And Cam Ward did a really good job of getting away from pressure, extending plays, and creating some opportunities down the field for Tennessee. And his running ability gave the Seahawks a lot of problems too. He had a rushing touchdown several times that he scrambled and was able to create extra downs. So I think that this was kind of a statement game for what Cam Ward could be. The Seahawks didn't necessarily, as Devin Witherspoon said, play up to their standard the second half. You give up down conversions. I know Mike Donald was not happy about that. You could tell after the game that was certainly something that he was by, even though they won. But nonetheless, I think you have to look at this from a couple different lenses. One, this is a team that had the Texans on the rope last week. The Texans have been playing really good football pretty much since Seattle beat them on Monday Night Football back in week 7. Tennessee has had 1 score losses this year, even though they have only 1 win. They have been competitive. With that being said, a win is a win in the NFL, and there's still a lot to be excited about in this game, namely the fact that Seattle did not have any turnovers. They didn't force any either, but this was the first time in 5 games that Sam Darnold did not have an interception and or a fumble that he lost. It was nice to see the Seahawks hold on to the football and not turn it over. They got really strong performances, generally strong performance, I guess the best way to put it, from Sam Darnold, Jaxon Smith-Njigba out there making history. And that was the big storyline for me on offense, is just seeing JSN break a DK Metcalf single season franchise record for receiving yards in game 11. I had to just kind of repeat that. It's still crazy to me. Game 11 breaking DK Metcalf's record. Had a 63-yard touchdown, a 56-yard catch later that was followed up by a 13-yard touchdown. He was the Seahawks offense today. The Titans had no answer for him. And I went into this game thinking there was a chance that that could happen because of Tennessee's secondary being so banged up and down to fourth, fifth stringers. And Smith-Njigba got a one-on-one safety, Amani, which is never going to go well for the Titans on that. It's no offense to Hooker, but that's not a good matchup for him. And JSN got his touchdown on that one. So it just felt like a matchup that was primed for him to absolutely dominate. And to his credit and to Sam Darnold's credit, the two of them absolutely went out and did that. Ken Walker III, Zach Charbonnet ran the football effectively. They got a red zone touchdown on the ground from Zach Charbonnet. One of the rare times the red zone was actually effective. That's another issue they had in this game. But generally speaking, wins are wins in the NFL. And I also think when you consider some of the injuries the Seahawks were dealing with, especially over the course of this game, they gave up a special teams touchdown to DK, who I think is going to be a fantastic player. I was impressed by him. He did have a botched kickoff return that he ended up going out of bounds inside the 5, but he made up for that with the 90-yard punt return, blazing speed. One of the few young focal points it looks like the Titans have on their roster. But Tennessee was able to take advantage of injuries that Seattle had in special teams, particularly. George Halani left with a hamstring injury. They lost Chaz Surratt, their standout linebacker that plays special teams. They lost him to an ankle injury the first quarter. So by the time that third quarter return for DK happened, they were missing two of their core special teams players, and they're getting pretty thin there. Tyakata exits in the second half before the second half starts with an oblique injury. So that forces DeAnthony Bell in. They were starting Patrick O'Connell, who made some plays. To his credit, he had a sack on the first drive, chasing down Cam Ward that forced a field goal, made a couple nice stops in the run game. So I thought it was a solid first NFL start for him in place of Ernest Jones, but you could still feel 13 not being out there. So with those injuries, defense, special teams, I think that played into Tennessee crawling back. And Seattle's offense, they just weren't able to do anything in their last couple drives, and it allowed the Titans to get those prolonged drives that were able to make this game look a lot closer than it really felt like it was. It seemed like most of the second half that this game was in doubt, or wasn't in doubt. And then Tennessee decided to make that run. So give the Titans their credit. Same time, the Seahawks on the road, 10 a.m. Pacific time start. They go out, they get the job done. Wins are wins in the NFL, and there was way more positive than negative coming out of this game, especially seeing Darnold not turning the football over. There were a few close calls sprinkled in there, but played clean football. They ran the football well. They were able to establish the line of scrimmage for the most part against a Tennessee defensive line that, as I mentioned during the week, had some pretty good players led by Jeffrey Simmons in the middle. They're all pro defensive tackles. So give the Seahawks the credit where it's due. They get the win. The ending was not pretty, certainly a lot closer than they would have liked it. That is not how they want to finish games. Mike McDonald's going to be dialing down on that throughout the course of this weekend practice, gearing up for their home game against the Vikings coming up this upcoming weekend. So we'll have to keep tabs on where that stands, but they have to do a better job finishing games. They still get the win. They're 8-3, improve their standing, getting into the playoffs. They stay within a game. It's a game and a half of the tiebreaker, but they still have a rematch of the Rams. They're right behind them in the NFC West. So it's a solid day. They got the win. That's all that really matters, and there were plenty of standouts. When we come back after surviving in the fourth quarter, who gets the game balls in offense, defense, and special teams? We'll get that coming up next here on our post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. Prize Picks being right can get you pay of the excitement of this sports season, whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both. There's no better time to jump into the action. If you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. I like picking my favorite players like Josh Allen, LeBron James, to see how my predictions play out. And with the new stacks feature, it's a game changer. You can now pick more on LeBron's points, rebounds, assists in the same lineup. Plus, if one of your players leaves early with injury, the injury reboot saves my lineup from a loss. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, it's good to be. Welcome back to the post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith, all the 12s who are tuning in, and thank you as always for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate your support of the podcast. The Seahawks improving to 8-3 with a 30-24 victory over the Titans in Nashville. As I pointed out in the score at the end, way closer than what the Seahawks would have liked it to be, considering they had 12 multiple times in this game, and then they let the Titans score 2 touchdowns in the final set. The Titans looked like they recovered initially, but it hit one of their players first before 10 yards. So a penalty, Seahawks can take a knee, and they get out of town with the victory. That's all that matters. Let's get to our game ball, shall we? And look, and he actually got a game ball for Mike McDonald. We're breaking DK Metcalf's single season record, his former teammate, now at 1,309 receiving yards for, and George Pickens still 300 behind him in second place. He is lapping everybody in the NFL right now in receiving yards. And that's Jaxon Smith-Njigba, and just an incredible performance by the emerging superstar. And I don't even know if we can use emerging anymore. Like, he is clearly a 100% superstar in this offense. Massive plays every single game, 63-yard touchdown. And the thing that just continues to amaze me about Jaxon Smith-Njigba is functions like a basketball player. When he is getting deep balls into the bucket, he at times will taper off the bit and he'll box out guys. He'll shield them from the football, and he's so good at it. The subtle little arm shiver without extending the arm isn't going to get called for a penalty. He's standing his ground. He is as good as any receiver in the NFL at doing that right now, and maybe in the last 15, 20 years. I think of Jerry Rice when I watch him do that. Jerry Rice was so good at that during his Hall of Fame career. I don't want to compare JSN to Jerry Rice. Obviously, that is one of one. But the way he's playing right now, I guess it's not far-fetched to make such comparison. But he breaks DK Metcalf's record. He becomes the first player in NFL history, at least modern NFL, 11 straight games to open a season with 75 or more receiving yards. He extends his franchise record with 8 100-yard receiving games, 167 today on 8 receptions. He is absolutely lighting it up. And when you consider with his 2 catches of 40-plus yards today, he has 8 of those this year. The next player on the list is Jameson Williams of the Lions with 4. He has half as many as what JSN has. So it hasn't been dink and dunk. Every single week seems like he is getting these explosive 40-plus yard receptions. He had 2 of them in this game. It has just been a sight to behold. And the way he's creating after the catch, dragging guys too, he is doing everything. And it is absolutely marvelous to watch. So easy game ball selection on offense for Jaxon Smith-Njigba. On the defensive side of the football, look, there were a lot of positives on defense. I know fans are going to look at the way the game ended. That certainly was not how the Seahawks wanted it. Devin Witherspoon saying playing below their standard. You could argue in the fourth quarter that very much was the case. They were getting to 4th downs over and over again, and they just could not get off the field. However, in the middle of this game, second and third quarter, defense was just dominating, flat out dominating in this game. And one of the big reasons why that was the case, the Titans didn't really have an answer for Leonard Williams, who had a fantastic game, had a sack, had 4 quarterback hits, which led the Seahawks, had a couple tackles for loss in the run game as well. He just was causing problems pretty much every snap that he was in. Tennessee did not have an answer for him. And so I was really impressed. Not that, it's another guy, we've seen him do it. He does it every week. But this was one of his most complete games this year in terms of every single play that he was in. Tennessee was just trying to keep him away from Cam Ward. And to Cam Ward's credit, there were a few times he did get away from him. He did it to several guys on Seattle's defense. I don't think Seahawks fans should be discounting what Cam Ward did today. That kid is a talented player, and Tennessee just needs to get some talent around him. He just doesn't have very much to work with there on that offense. But Leonard Williams able to get him down for a sack. He decked him 4 times. He chased him out of the pocket a couple of times. He had the 2 tackles for loss. I just felt like 99. There were other guys on this defensive line that made some splash plays. Leonard Williams was doing it the entire day. So another massive game for the big cat in the middle of Seattle's defense. And on special teams, the player that I'm picking for my special teams game ball, it's funny. I almost put him on stock down for a 3-up, 3-down, kind of previewing our last segment. Almost put him on that 3-down list because he didn't have a single catch today, and he's got 3 catches in 3 games with the Seahawks. So Rashid Shaheed's trying to find his way, and I'm not blaming him for the lack of catches. I think he and Sam Darnold are just trying to figure things out chemistry-wise after a midseason trade. Sometimes it can take 4 or 5 games to get there. But one thing that Rashid Shaheed is delivering on, he is delivering on special teams. He is making big plays time and time again. He's making plays that are igniting the offense by giving them great field position. And I just would, look, Torrey Horton was doing great on punt return. So I don't want to discount anything he was doing. He had a franchise record 95-yard punt return early this year against the Saints. But Rashid Shaheed today had a 20-yard punt return and a 19-yard punt return that both set up scoring drives. And the last one, the 19-yarder, they were inside the 30-yard line of the Titans at the end of that punt return. And it looked like Tennessee had decent coverage on those plays, but this guy's a blur when he gets the ball in his hands. When he takes off, he is like a blur. He just shoots through the gap, and guys were running past him. They were whiffing on him. And that's just that explosive, twitchy first step that he offers. And so averaging a little over 17 yards per return in this game. He really was fantastic in special teams department, and it set the Seahawks well on offense with points they ended up needing down the stretch with those field goals. So Shaheed might not be doing big things on offense just yet. I think that is going to come. One of these games, he is going to break out, and Seattle's going to have another explosive weapon to go with JSN that consistently can threaten teams downfield. That timing stuff is not there yet, but you're seeing the athleticism on special teams. He's finding ways to make an impact, even if he hasn't quite gotten there on offense, and he and Sam Darnold are still trying to work through things. So second special teams ball for him in 3 weeks coming from me. You're getting good, solid special teams contributions from it. Again, I think he is on the cusp of that massive game coming up. It could potentially be this next week against Minnesota. We'll see, but there's going to be a game coming up where you're going to start seeing Rashid Shaheed really factor into Seattle's offense. It hasn't happened yet, but he is delivering on special teams, and that makes the trade that they made with New Orleans a good one so far. I expect that he is going to have an uptick in production on offense. It is coming. I know fans are getting impatient, but you're seeing the athlete that he is. Now Seattle's just got to get that chemistry, that timing down, and they got to find ways to get him involved a little bit more. It is going to happen. I love what I'm seeing on special teams from him, and he had a great game setting up a couple of those scoring opportunities for the Seattle Seahawks. Coming up next, we've got our weekly 3-up, 3-down stock watch. Going to be looking at who's hot and who's not coming out of Week 12 in Nashville. That's coming your way next year on our post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by our friends over at Game Time. The NFL season's already in Week 12. There's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets, it can be chaotic. Whether you're talking login screens, prices jumping in the checkout, it's frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time at the best price, and all the fees are included. So the price you see is the price you pay. When I pull up on Game Time in just a couple clicks, I get amazing deals. We're talking NFL games under $75. The app makes it super simple. I can see the exact view from my seat before I purchase. And with Zone Deals, you pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. Download a Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. I'm so excited about the new jeans that I just received from Duer. I had heard how amazing they were, and they have lived up to the hype. They're antibacterial, meaning your jeans stay fresh longer so you can wear more and wash less. And they have Cool Max technology that regulates your body temperature and wicks moisture. You stay cool and comfortable no matter what happens with the temperature. They're designed to look great and stay comfortable all day, no matter what you're doing with their original performance denim. Simply put, Duer makes the world's most comfortable pants without having a sacrifice in style. Trust me, once you try these, they'll be your go-to. Get yourself a pair or as an amazing holiday gift. Go now to shopduer.com/LockedOnSeattle. You'll get 15% off your order. That's shopduer.com/LockedOnSeattle for 15% off. Welcome back to the post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in, and thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate your support of the podcast. Seahawks moving to 8-3 with a 30-24 victory over the Titans in Nashville, closer than it appeared for most of the game. Seattle let Tennessee creep back into it, maybe a little too close for comfort, but nonetheless, a win is a win. Seattle keeps pace in the NFC West, now 5 games over 500, and with one more victory, guaranteed a winning season. Obviously, that is not the Seahawks' goal this year. They want much more than that, but to be there with 6 games remaining on the schedule certainly is where Seattle would like to be, an ideal spot where they can still potentially compete for the number 1 seed in the NFC. Let's get to our weekly stock watch, 3 up, 3 down. And in a win, there's been a few victories as of late where I've done 3 up and 3 up. But again, you almost lose this game. You find a way to let Tennessee creep back in, a team that had 1 win going into the season. There were some negatives in this game as well, but let's get on the 3 up side of things, and we'll start with the positives. And I'm going to highlight Sam Darnold here. And look, I mentioned this earlier. I don't think Sam was perfect by any stretch of the imagination. 61% completion rate. There were some questionable decisions that luckily he was fortunate on this week. I don't necessarily know that one of those was his fault. There were 3 throws that I had circled that maybe 2 of them I would have as turnover-worthy plays. Maybe 3 if you are a harsher judge of the quarterback position. But first drive, he had one that he threw to Ken Walker III that was nearly intercepted by Marcus Harris, the rookie cornerback. And Walker actually played defender and knocked the ball out of his hands. That might have been a pick 6. So that was a throw you still look at like, gosh, we got to get rid of these. There's too many of these. Luckily, the Titans didn't pick that off. There was an end zone shot to A.J. Barner from the red zone that bounced off the Titans' chest in double coverage, popped up in the air for what felt like an eternity. I thought for sure somebody was going to run underneath it in a blue uniform, but it didn't happen. Hits the turf. Seahawks settle for a field goal on that drive. And then there was a dead duck that was so wobbly in the early fourth quarter that even the defender had no chance to bring it in. That one definitely was a turnover-worthy throw that probably shouldn't have been made. So I think you consider that it was far from a perfect game. And yet I love the fact that Sam Darnold was taking his checkdowns. He was getting Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet involved. It was opening things up in the back end. The 2 beautiful deep balls that he threw to Jaxon Smith-Njigba, had a couple nice throws to Cooper Kupp in the second half along the sideline. I thought he looked a lot more like the Sam Darnold that we had been seeing most of this year, rather than the one that had a really rough game in LA and had the 4 interceptions. Way more positives than negatives. I thought he did a better job of balancing being aggressive for big plays and taking what the defense was giving him. Still some plays that he can look at and do better and improve upon, but I thought it was a much better performance. So for that, let's give him a 3 up. The response from the adversity last week, Seattle's got to be excited with Same old Sam Darnold, as they like to say, showing up every week, the same guy, and this week coming out and playing much better football. Second guy, let's actually hover to the running back position in general. I thought K9 and Zach Charbonnet both played really good football games today. 71 rushing yards for Ken Walker. I have been really encouraged these last couple games. He just seems like he's more confident right now with the blocks in front of him, reading them and being decisive with it. I was critical. There's been our good buddy Turbo here on Seahawks Squad Show was critical of him as well. I feel like these last couple of weeks that he is doing a much better job with that. He just looks more comfortable in the offense. So he had 71 rushing yards, had a 29-yard catch on a screen. So he keeps coming up with explosives in the passing game. The Seahawks are actually using him in that capacity. And then Zach Charbonnet averaged almost 6 yards per carry today at the running back position and had a beautiful touchdown run that he was able to outrun defenders, looked like K9 outrunning them to the sideline and then turning upfield, getting a 5-yard score when it looked like the Titans initially had a good beat on that run play. So I thought both these guys played really well in all facets. They got involved in the passing game. They ran the football effectively. Between them, over 6.4 yards per carry. If Seattle could bottle that up against every team, they'd be feeling pretty darn good about where this offense was at. And on the defensive side of the football, Devin Witherspoon's had kind of a rough season, especially when you consider the injuries and playing in a few games where he clearly was not 100%. That is an issue that the Seahawks are going to have to work through. But he now looks like he is all the way back. Had a really impressive pass breakup in the back of the end zone when the Titans were trying to take a shot against him, and had another breakup in this game. We got to see the physicality from him as well in the run game, made a couple really nice stops. Had one of them that got wiped out by a penalty by another player on the defense that isn't going to show up in the stats. He's looking more like Devin Witherspoon, making a lot of plays on the football, nearly called to take it away from him. He felt like he should have got a partial sack on that. I kind of agree on that, but scorekeepers gave Derek Hall the full sack. Really did a little bit of everything in this game. Looked much more like the Spoon that fans were accustomed to before that knee injury made it that he was not playing anywhere close to 100% when he was in the lineup, and he missed a bunch of games early in the season. As for the flip side, a lot of times I go with individual players, but I'm going to be kind of pointing out game situations or parts of the game that did not go well for the Seahawks, because there wasn't necessarily a player that jumped out to me where it felt like this guy had a really rough game necessarily. There were mistakes that were made, but I felt like everybody who was out there was making some kind of a positive contribution. But when you're looking from a team aspect, the red zone offense, that is still an area that is concerning right now. Last week, the Seahawks lost that game. I know you can point to the interceptions too, but getting only one touchdown on 4 red zone trips against the Rams, they lost by 2. If you just get a touchdown on one of those drives, they win that football game. They went 2 for 4 in this one, scoring touchdowns. And 50% isn't horrible, but the Seahawks expect to do better, particularly against the opponent that they were going up against. And there were some missed opportunities there. There's no question about it. You can question whether that throw should have been made to A.J. Barner that got tipped up in the air and looked like an interception waiting to happen. It just can't quite get out of their own way in the red zone the last few weeks. They had penalty issues today. There was a delay of game, as Sam Darnold took the blame for in the red zone that dropped them back 5 yards. They just haven't been as efficient scoring touchdowns down there as they would like, and the way they were for most of the season the last 2 weeks. That is still a major point of emphasis. And then on the defensive side of the football, the fourth down defense. Now, again, give some credit to Cam Ward. The rookie was balling on some of those fourth downs. He was making life tough for Seattle's pass rushers, even behind a suspect offensive line. He was making some flashy plays. Same time, Seahawks seemed like they weren't sticking to their guys in coverage the way that we are accustomed to seeing. They weren't splatting on those guys. It was not your typical stingy Seahawks defense, at least in the fourth quarter, where they gave up several of these fourth down conversions, 5 for 7 in the game. They got a couple stops, but yeah, again, that's going to be a weak spot for Mike McDonald this week, that he is going to be hammering home in the film study. How do we avoid giving up some of these fourth down conversions and giving the other team life? Because that's really what got the Titans in the game, was extending these drives that kept being on the final hour, and they kept extending. It's like they were getting daylight savings time multiple times during this game with those 4th down conversions. So that is going to be a point of emphasis for Mike McDonald and his coaching staff, that they've got to find a way when they do get in those situations to get off the field. You can't let a rookie quarterback with a bunch of weapons missing, like have all the 4th down conversions. And there were plays that could have been made there to change the outcome that the Seahawks just didn't finish. They didn't get it done. So not something they're going to be happy with. And the last thing here, the pre-snap penalty. Seahawks, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, had quite a few penalties in this game. Both teams were penalized extensively. There was a lot of yellow on the field in this game. It was both sides. The Seahawks had some really good plays on defense that didn't count, though, because of offsides or encroachment penalties. Seattle managed to make some plays in spite of those penalties driving them back. But there were also some situations where those loomed large that delay a game that may have taken away a touchdown opportunity, and the Seahawks had to settle for a field goal. They had multiple false starts. There were issues with encroachment and penalties on defense on multiple occasions. There was a holding penalty that wiped out a really nice tackle that was made by Devin Witherspoon against the run. So you can look at this game and say, man, these are some of the penalties we don't want to have. That was something that I don't know if it necessarily was a huge reason why the Titans clawed back in this game, but it certainly did not help Seattle's situation. It extended some drives for Tennessee's offense, set the Seahawks back some on offense several times, getting them from touchdown into field goal in the red zone, at least in one case. Those need to be cleaned up a little bit going into the game against Minnesota next weekend at Lumen Field. As always, you can follow me at X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast to make a goal episode. Coming up tomorrow, my co-host Rob Rang and I will be diving this game in Nashville, more in-depth way tomorrow. Make sure to listen in and enjoy the rest of your Sunday night. Go Hawks.